this context, it's no better person that Dr. Edmund, who is talking about that he's a medical professional and he's a doctor, and he's seeing this risk as a different person. So when we talk about interacting risk, interconnected risk, compounding risk, and cascading risk, we all have this kind of an interplay which is coming to the finally landing up to the health of the people. And Professor Raghavan also mentioned that it's not only that people get affected by pandemic and mortality, but other ailments also need to be looked at in terms of risk, which gets neglected at the time of this kind of pandemic crisis. So, Dr. Edmund, you need to just highlight this, how this complexity of risks and getting impacted on the people, and how this as a public health system and as a doctor, the South Asian nation should deal with this in future, in times to come. And as Dr. Raghavan also mentioned, this is not uncertain and it was not unknown. The pandemic was known. So how one should prepare for the future now?
Thank you, Professor Santosh. A very good day to each one of you joining us across the seas and oceans, lands and hills across Asia and South Asia in particular. At the outset, let me extend my warm congratulations to UNESCAP, friends at NIDM, and other collaborators whose work I've been following closely over the years, and which continues to remain an inspiration for the kind of global South we aspire to build. I'm particularly very thrilled to observe that we have sectoral experts cutting across all levels of involvement. So 100 on 100 to all the organizers. Let me draw your attention here that a perfect storm is now brewing in the South Asian region, which faces cascading risk in triplet: natural disasters, climate change, and biological disasters, along with a pandemic like COVID-19, calls for extraordinary resilience. But while we do this, we need to integrate the processes of disaster management and health risk that faces this region. This is reminded of one of the incidents where I worked in. Imagine a poor family of 2 adults and 3 children. The adults are now going through an unemployment due to a pandemic like COVID-19, and suddenly they're faced with a flood situation which has destroyed their home. They've lost their livestock. Few days into the floods, the adults have now suffered from a full-blown dengue fever, and in hospital, they stand in need of blood platelets for survival, depending on the mercy of an overwhelmed health system. Don't you feel the burden of this cross is too heavy to bear? What happens to the adults? What happens to those 3 children? How do we create a future that leaves no one behind? This situation leaves us as stakeholders with 2 questions. What can we do for them is question number 1. What can we learn from them is question number 2. As stakeholders in the risk reduction process, plugging the cascading risk facing the region becomes of paramount importance now than ever before. Flooding and cyclonic storms have direct implications on waterborne diseases, vector-borne diseases, and also affects chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, kidney ailments, particularly those suffering from chronic kidney injury, and to some extent, skin infection as well. I have personally treated patients across these spectrums during Typhoon Haiyan 2013 in Iloilo, Philippines, and I also see some of my colleagues from Philippines have joined this year. During the Nepal earthquake in 2015, Chennai floods in India in 2015, Kerala floods in 2018, and very lately as Cyclone Fani in 2019. Droughts also have direct implication on malnutrition, where the cycle of malnutrition starts building up. From 2 square meals a day, it reduces to 1 square meal a day and propagates this cycle where malnutrition, decreased rainfall, agriculture and crop losses, and droughts work very comprehensively in further propagating the disease burden. This also has implications on waterborne diseases, usual sanitation and hygiene practices, which get compromised and often are taken for granted within the communities. Earthquakes also come with their baggage of damaging critical health infrastructure, besides causing injury, post traumatic stress disorder, and a mental health imbalance. What do we then need to do? Addressing these risks call for a new algorithm and an approach that pushes for a public health in all disaster policies. Let me repeat, this pushes for a public health in all disaster policies. When I mean public health in all disaster policies, it means that health must be approached from a social, commercial, and a legal determinant of healthcare, which has the snowballing potential to plug existential gap in the process to mitigate risk that the region faces. Naturally, so to say, cross-sectoral convergence will remain very crucial for regional cooperation among countries in putting risk-informed planning at the heart of development. A new framework drawing inspiration from Sendai, from Bangkok Principles, and also the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals will mean that we implement and retrofit health centers at the primary level, at the community level, and at the tertiary level of health system strengthening. Doctors, nurses, allied health service providers, and my colleagues are all taught to look at human body, to inspect a patient, to palpate a patient, to auscultate a patient and diagnose disease. But what we will now have to do moving forward is to prepare doctors and nurses to be disaster prepared, disaster responsive, and disaster alert to practice medicine with limited resources. Why do I say practice medicine with limited resources? Healthcare providers working in hospitals work in comfortable environments with access to each of those requirements within a space of, say, 10 to 20 meters. But when you go to the field, you start practicing medicine on the field, this calls for challenges. I mean, a number of times where I have worked, I've not had a nurse, I've not had a pharmacy assistant, I've not had a lot of comfortable things which I would otherwise have access within a corridors of a health system or a hospital. What would this mean? I would like to leave all of you with a few points to consider in framing policies back at a regional level, at a national level, and at a state and local level. At a regional level, we as stakeholders must consciously adapt to a multi-risk hazard cooperation mechanism and engage in shared global health diplomacy to shape risk-informed approach for the region. At a national level, efforts in South Asia will need to address cascading multiple risks while engaging in regional cooperation to align with 2030 agenda and to also ensure that extreme weather events do not become a watershed moment for a developmental process. And this does not lead to a collapse of the health system, but rather strengthen it time and again. Convergence of line ministries at the national level, which includes disaster management, health ministry, planning ministry, women and child, rural development, all of them will have to come together. I mean, it's very easy to work in silos, but putting in coordinated mechanism effort calls for work. At a state and a local level, engage disaster management authorities to revisit their DM plans and integrate a public health response very comprehensively This necessarily means that we have outbreak investigation, we have emergency medical teams, and we have hospitals and medical college involved into the DM plan that we prepared, notwithstanding the involvement of non-government organizations, which is crucial as a backbone and the fifth pillar of any democratic process that govern us. Preparing health workers in the region to practice medicine with limited resources and challenging environments is something that we need to move forward and think through. This also means keeping in mind antibiotic resistance that faces the region. If an infected person or a patient comes to a clinic in a field, there is no point treating every patient that comes with antibiotics like amoxicillin and clavulanic acid, because you are slowly and unconsciously building up antibiotic resistance, which has been a matter of global concern. And it has been equally amplified by the World Health Organization as well. Hospital preparedness plans need to be revised, being mindful of these cascading risks, and field hospitals need to be identified and kept on standby at all times as we move forward in shaping the risk-informed planning and also thereby subsequently building resilience within our state level, within our local level, within our national level, and within the region of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Asia Pacific at large. Over to you, Professor Santosh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edmund Fernandez, the CEO of the health sector, CHD, you are leading with. Thank you very much for bringing those points.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to receive latest updates and stories.